Since the topic is cropped up in the forums, I thought I would have a little look at generating masks and using a mask. For that I'm going to use PaintShop Pro 8. That will help me process the masks, and I'm going to use this file which Horo and I should be giving away at Christmas time, and that will be through the DAS forums. And I just want to use a few components of this source to combine with this image. So this is just a photograph. You can see we've got this fairly shiny, a bit shiny table in the foreground. That's also not in focus, but never mind. And the idea is to put some of these elements on that picture using masks and PaintShop Pro. So I'll start by getting rid of some of the things I don't need from this scene. So from this overhead view, I'm just going to cut out these boxes and these couple of items in the background there, which leaves us with this group here, and rotate the camera. And for this scene, what I'm going to do is I'm going to match the dimensions of this render to the dimensions of this background. So I'll find out that's 850 by 638, this image. So I go to Document Setup and go take constraint proportions off, 850 and whatever the other figure was, 638, 638, and that will set the two, so that'll just make them easier to combine. The other thing I want to consider is what kind of field of view, because I want to try and match these up between this one and this picture. So I need the field of view to be more or less the same, otherwise the perspective is going to be wrong. So I'm guessing here, and to make things render a bit quicker, I go to Render Options and reduce the raise per pixel to 4 for the time being. So I'll just have a look how this looks. Right, so this is how this is rendering with fairly low raise per pixel, and that's not going to take very long to render as things stand. So I'll just let that render out, and I'm going to save this file, and the image will be saved with it. And then I can look at generating a mask. I'm going to start off using Bryce's inbuilt masks, and then we'll look at making a bit more sophisticated masks. So file, save as TM1. So I'll just let that save. Then we go to Render Options here, and you can set the masking here in the Render Options, or you'll notice it's duplicated down here, so you can just go Object Mask, for example. So I've got Object Mask. That means that it will set for the selected object. So I'll select this group in the foreground, and if I now render that using the same render settings, so depth of field will also affect it, then I get a mask. So I'll now go save that as TM and 1 underscore mask. Right, so now going back into PaintShop Pro, and I load in my image, I load in my mask, I select my image, I go to Layers, New Mask Layer, from Image, select Mask, get OK, and you can see that it's masked our little grouping here. Now bring in this background there, Control C to copy that, Control L to add in a new layer, and then I just here need to jiggle the layers around a bit. So if I take this layer that I've just put in, which is the background, out of the grouping with the masks, and then drop that group in front of it, it'll put those on the table for me. So now you can see there are a few drawbacks with just doing this straight masking, because this surface is quite reflective, but it's not reflecting any of the group. And these volumetric candle flames, you can see that it's masked the shape of the object, and it's not obeying the shape of the volume flame. So it's left these points on, which is a bit odd. And likewise, I suppose, as far as the lighting is concerned, it's not really a bad match as far as lighting is concerned, but there are no shadows. So this group does tend to look a bit tacked onto this image. So that's your most basic way of masking in. Now we'll consider how we can make it improve it and make it a bit more sophisticated. So I'll not bother with that one. I'll get rid of these, just tidy up for the moment, and go back to our scene where we were before with the render. Okay, so this carpet, because of the sophisticated render mode, is actually contributing to the colours on this here, and we need to also take account of the candle flames. So there's a few different considerations. It'd be nice if we could get shadows, and it'd be very good if we could get reflection. So I'm going to change this carpet, which is on this plane. I'm going to put in there, I want to convert it to another object. So I've forgotten where that is. Oh, it's on edit, that's why. Right, edit, convert selection to 2D surface. I'm going to modify that 2D surface now, reset it, and set the diffuse to a picture, which it's already in a picture because that was previously loaded the carpet image. I'm going to load in the background image that we had a moment ago, and check that out, and check out of that for the moment, because this is going to provide an appropriate colour for underneath. I know it's not quite at the right angle, but it'll be better than nothing because it'll match the colours up. So what I want to do is position this more or less where it might appear underneath the candles. I know that, as I say, the perspective's not correct, but we've got this distribution here. It's looking a bit bright there, so what I can do is tone this down by reducing the diffusion. So turn the diffusion down, and I want to put the reflections in so I get some candles, so I could add 50 on the reflection, and if I want the colour from the surface to become involved, I could use metallic, but I don't know if that's appropriate, so we'll just have a look at that as it is. Yes, it's lost a bit of its intensity of colour, so I will use metallic there and not incorporate any of these other things. So, and that gives me a dark surface that's a fairly good match for the one I'm going to add it onto, because it is the picture I'm going to add it onto, ignoring this bit in the background here. And now what I'll do is I'll just let that render again at the low quality settings for now. I'll just turn the quality settings up when I've finally satisfied with the results. So this is still experimentation. So file, save as. Since I put TM1 before, it'll automatically increment it to TM2, so I don't lose my previous file. Let that save, and now give some consideration to the mask. So the mask situation, well, the obvious ones to begin with is I don't want that to select that light group. I just want those objects there. Get rid of that mask. So on these objects here, except for the flame, which I can exclude by holding Shift key down while clicking on candle effect, will take them out of that selection, can just be white. So go into material, reset that material, turn the ambience up, make that full ambient white, and then in the ambient channel, which is already set to white, that will make those white. I don't need these lights, so I can get rid of those lights, and I don't need that light, because candle effect on the volume is here, if we select it, driven by ambience. So I just need to make sure that these colours are set in the flame. So this is the flame effect, so I'm just making sure that it's either black or white according to how I want the mask to work. So now where the flame's coloured, it's white, and where it's non-existent, it's black, which means that it will be masked out. If I go into the Skylab, I can get rid of the reflected background, which is Horror's living room then, and that will mean that it won't be getting on this surface, because the other thing I want to do is to make sure the atmosphere is off and it's set fully to black, so that's not interacting. So I'm just generating the mask layer now. So let's see how far we've got. Okay, we've got a bit of reflection, but that's coloured, so I need to modify this surface now. So I've got the 2D face, and I make the material here. I'm going to use fully black. Now here's a question. It'd be nice to get shadows on that, but I'm going to need that light source. The light source I deleted a short while ago. That's a little bit inconvenient because I don't know where that light source is. So I will have this reflective, so I'll give it 50 reflection, and I'll give it 100 ambience for now, because I don't No, that was a bad idea, wasn't it? I don't want any ambience. Also get rid of that for a second. I don't need diffusion for now. I'm just thinking about the shadows. So, in order to generate the shadows, I'll use a negative light, and use a negative light where the light source is. So if I save this at the moment, save as tm2 mask, I'll show you a trick to get something in from another file, which I inadvertently deleted. So I'll load in the file here with the light source in, which I was thinking of, this one here, this radial light, and I just edit and copy that. And now load in the mask file, the one I deleted the light source from, and now edit and paste, and it'll put the light source in the appropriate place. But to get the shadows, what I'm going to do is edit this light source and make it a negative light. So this light will now suck light out of the scene, and in order to get that working with the 2D face, I need to make the 2D face glow a bit, and that way the glowing will bring the light up, and the diffusion, if I'll make this white so it can respond to the light source, the diffusion will cause the white of the diffuse channel, because of the negative light, to become black. So that will counteract the ambient, and it should, if I can get it set up right, create us some shadows. So these white spots will transfer hopefully the darker ground into the shadow region there. They seem a bit general, those spots, don't they? I would have thought they'd have some sense of direction from this light source. Ah, yes, of course, that those are also being generated from these white objects in the scene. So we'll increase this ambient response and see. Let's see at what point. Oh, it's got a bit light there. Oops. And we'll just cut that down. Yes, it's the true ambience is because it's a true ambience render, we don't need the true ambience at this point, so I could get rid of those and true ambience and just use the standard lighting model, and that'll get rid of that scatter. I can just see a faint lighter area there that's going to be my shadow, so I'll go back to where I was with this before and see what it looks like now. So I need that to be a bit brighter, so I'll take the ambience up to 50 and then have to cut more out by using the light. So use the light, and I could make it none, and that will allow it to cover more area. That's a bit better now. Still a bit too glow, so I'll take it to -2. Oh, that's better. Right, and then if I take the ambience down here, let's try 25. So it's just a matter of juggling these figures. So I can see it's still slightly glowing there, so what I'll do is I'll reduce it to 20. So now I can still see a little bit maybe of glow there, but not much. I suppose that's close enough. So white areas are going to transfer the image, which looks like that, so bear that in mind. And there where there's a bit of reflection, it'll transfer some of the image in the reflection, and here where there's a shadow, where it could be slightly darker, it'll transfer some shadow region. So we'll try that. So I can just save this now, because I'd already saved this once on its mask file, and we'll see whether we're getting close to the effect we're looking for. So bring PaintShop Pro back in, and I'll load in my image and its mask. Select the image and go layers, new mask layer, from image. I'll get the mask. Okay, so now you can see a bit of reflection, a bit of shadow. So this shadow region needs really to be darker than the area it's going on. I won't discover that until I've combined it. So I'll find my background and I press Ctrl C, then I can do Ctrl L, and then as before you see the need to juggle the layers around. So I'll lift that up, that's now in the foreground, then drop the masked one over the top of it, and then I can turn this mask layer on and off, and then I can see whether it's getting darker or lighter on the shadow. So you can see it is slightly darker on the shadows, and we've got some reflection there. So the effect is somewhat subtle. I think maybe I could probably get away with making that shadow region a bit darker, and otherwise it's pretty close. I suppose the last consideration is that this foreground area is a bit out of focus, so I need to shift the depth of field effect so it's focusing behind these objects, and then these two will be slightly blurred. So this is a final round then. I'll go back to my initial file here, right, and say try and get this darker will mean I could set this diffuse value down to 40, so that'll make it a bit darker, won't it? So look, yeah, it's got a bit darker. And depth of field effect, right, what I could do with is being able to position something. There we go, use a sphere over here, right, and that can be my marker. So I go render options, set to current selection, which is that sphere in the distance, and then have a quick render and see how out of focus these things go. Look like they're a bit too out of focus. So I've got to try and match it up with the photograph. And I need to set to current selection, I forgot then. So set to current selection, so I moved it forward. See if that's still looks quite a bit out of focus, so bring it forward again. And remember to go set to current selection this time, so that's it there. Render the candle. Okay, so difficult to judge without more rays per pixel, so at this point I'll increase the rays per pixel so I can get a bit of a judgment on how blurred that is. I still think it's a bit too out of focus. I'll bring forward again like this, and render options, set to current selection. Right, okay, I think that's about right to match the photograph. So I'll go edit and copy that sphere where it is there and delete it now from this one. And bear in mind that means that gives me a copy of that sphere that I'm holding for this render. I'll go render options and I'll turn the render options right up to get a high quality render. We'll have a look how long that's going to take now. A while, it seems. Okay, 25 minutes, right, not forgetting that I've got that sphere saved, because I can then use that to drop into the mask layer to set the depth of field, because the depth of field has to be set the same for this and the mask. So as I say, I'll just pause the video here. As you can see, the render is almost complete, and since this part of the render is not going to play any part because it's going to be masked out, I can save it at this point. So I'll just go File and Save As. It'll automatically increment it for me, so that's TM3. Now I did say that I'd copied the sphere, which is going to be my target. So if I load in TM2's mask now, I can go edit and paste. That'll give me the target. So I now go render options and set to current selection. And before I do the rendering, I'll just knock that out now. I'm going to take this 2D face and I'm going to convert it into an infinite plane, just so that if that picks up any more light from because it's slightly glowing, then it won't create a harsh transition in the background, so it'll be less obvious. So I'll just give that a quick render to make sure there's no obvious problems. So now that's slightly out of focus on that. That should line up with the image that we're going to do, so all those things blur, the blurring matches the blurred image of the other one. Go render options. Since this is a transient render, I don't need to do such high rays per pixel. Generally 64 is good enough for high quality depth of field effect, and should be enough for the soft shadows, so that's not going to take as long as the other render did. And so I'll just let this render out. I'll pause the video here, and then we'll combine them in PaintShop Pro and see if it's a decent match or not. So there's my newly constructed mask. I'll just save this as save as, and I'll have to increment the number myself here because I've got mask at the end of it. So now the moment of truth in PaintShop Pro. I'll just clear off these old experiments and bring in the newly rendered image, the newly created mask. Select the image, go layers, new mask layer from image, and then select the mask. So that now gives me my masked image. Then get the background, so I get the background, bring that in, and then Control C for the background, then Control L to bring it in as a new layer. Oops, I failed to Control C it. Control C, Control L, right, and then I've got to juggle this group now. So I run the raster over the top of the group and then put the group over the top of the raster, and that allows them to be combined. So that's now with the depth of field effect. Obviously there's a slight risk with the depth of field effect because of the blurring of the edge and the blurring of this candles and the flames. Then it depends what the background was that gets blurred into it. So if the background wasn't a tremendously good match, you'll blur in bits of colour that don't relate to the background. So it's not entirely perfect, but obviously masking is quite involved, or can be quite involved. So I'll just zoom in there and we'll see how it looks. So it's not bad. There's a bit of a shadow effect. I think I could have gone for more shadows. The coloured areas match a bit, I suppose. The reflections on there is not terribly out. I suppose the light source in truth should have been moved further away so this edge of the candle was lit in the same way as this one, because the original light source in the scene was closer to the objects. But these are all things you can adjust as you go along. That's the basic premise. So that shows you how to mask your objects, mask a volumetric material, mask for shadows, which uses the negative light, and masking for reflections. So that just about covers everything you need to know. I hope that was interesting and informative. That's the end of the tutorial.